I worked in L&D for a number of years, and I've always been interested in how organizations train their staff for performance and getting the real results that their business needs to succeed. That's why when I saw Jamie Dixon's content around about shaping pathways and practical training that delivers results, I wanted to get his advice on some things that businesses should be doing better. So Jamie, you've been in learning development for 10 years and helped over 100 companies implement a practical training strategy. So what are some of the things that you've seen people get wrong?
Well, the first thing is thinking that a topic is a solution, and it's not a solution. So an analogy is if you have a headache and you go to the doctors and ask for painkillers, a doctor might give you painkillers, but that might not be the solution to the problem. It might be that you need to have better nutrition, you need to do some exercise, you need to change some things about your lifestyle. And so training to performance is really just a painkiller. It's always only going to be a part of the solution, never the whole solution. And so when we focus too much on topics and just selling topics, we're not really selling solutions. So that's the first bad habit.
So I take it then a lot of businesses do get it wrong and they just think, do you know what? I think this is the quickest way to fix the problem, but it's more a cure where prevention essentially is what you're suggesting is better.
Thinking holistically and what else needs to be there, and also what is the real problem in the first place? Because a lot of the time, stakeholders will come to us with a problem, and with a bit more digging, we find the problem they come to us with is just a headache, and actually there's a more serious problem underneath, which is the one we really need to focus on.
It reminds me of sales that I was taught by a sales trainer to sometimes really dig at objections, because the real objection that they've got isn't the objection that they're vocal about quite often. One of the problems I saw when I worked in organizations when it came to resolving a perceived problem was just throwing content at it. Like, oh, here you go, here's access to a platform with 700 courses on customer service or 700 courses on, cybersecurity awareness. Sometimes you think the problem is throwing enough mud and then expecting people to find the right stuff for themselves.
Training, for performance, training is always only going to be a part of the solution. But even within training itself, content is only a part of training. And for example, practice is also a very important component of training. We typically think of activities, even tests, as practice. And yeah, they are a form of practice, but then there's lots of different forms of practice. There's shadowing people who can already do the skill back at work. There's having people observe you when you're doing the skill and giving you evaluation. There's creating opportunities to practice back at work. Another component of effective training is reflection, which is typically what we use discussion questions for. And reflection is, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of training, because that's when you're actually treading these new neural pathways in your brain and you're raising awareness and changing beliefs and changing your mindset. And I think one of the values training brings is we don't always have enough time for reflection at work. And so training gives people the time and space for reflection. And so it's actually really important that we don't have too much content so that we can leave enough time for things like practice and reflection. So content is always only a part of the training. And in my opinion, it's a part that helps people practice better. And if it's not got anything to do with practice, then it's not helpful at all, and it's not practical.
So if I'm listening to this now and I identify some of these problems in my own business, what would be your 3 good habits that I should be implementing as soon as possible?
So number 1 is don't focus on topics and don't even focus on problems. Start by focusing on goals. Get really, really clear on what goals are really important to the stakeholders that I'm speaking to, or the functions that I'm working in, or just the business in general, and focus on those. Because when you identify what the goals are, then you can go back to all of the problems that they've shared, and you can ask them which of these problems are stopping you from achieving this goal. And that way you can find the real problems like I talked about earlier.
And then you can almost say which are the most important, and you can tackle them sort of in some sort of order. So focus on goals, and that'll help us identify the real problems. What would your second good habit be?
Outsource memory. So if I get quite blunt, the ancient Sumerians they used writing because they knew that we couldn't depend on the human memory to remember so many details. They knew 3,000-4,000 years ago that the human memory is limited and can't remember that much, and our memory is just unreliable. We all use smartphones every single day as a way of outsourcing memory because we know we're going to forget so many things. So when I see trainers in the training room who say, now it's important you remember this, I get quite frustrated because they're not going to remember it. There are so many reasons why people will forget things. And it really is ridiculous how many reasons there are. And so by outsourcing memory, what I mean is use a tool. If you have all of this content, convert it into a checklist, a template, a framework, a process or form, and so on.
So human memory being rubbish and people being a letdown. So outsource stuff is your second good habit. What's your third and final good habit?
Get contextual. So context is absolutely everything. And if you think of people's capacity to change behavior, it's really, really limited. And I have a concept that I call the energy budget. To change, it requires energy. And the change we're asking people to make using this training, how much on a scale of 1 to 10, how much energy is that going to take? And in the moment when they would take that action, how much energy do they have available? So if I take a typical example, coaching skills for managers. I've seen a lot of coaching skills for managers training that teaches them the executive coaching approach, where you sit down one-on-one with an employee and you use the grow model and you just ask questions and you don't give advice. And that actually, in my experience from a lot of the managers I've worked with, that exceeds their energy budget significantly. And so to understand the context, there's a tool I designed called Application Context Analysis, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It analyzes the context they're going to be in when they are applying what they're supposed to learn in the training. And we analyze things like, what environment are they going to be in? What time of day is it going to be? How much time will they have available to do this action? Who else is going to be around them? How are they going to be feeling, and so on? And if you look at a lot of managers, when they have an opportunity to coach, they're not sitting down one-on-one in a meeting room, and it's not going to be for an hour. It's going to be maybe 2 minutes here and there when they're on a Zoom call and they've got 101 other things to talk about. So just by doing a little context analysis that can sometimes only take a few minutes just by asking the right questions, you can identify that the content that you originally had planned for training is way out of their energy budget, and they're not going to be able to use it at all. And that can really help us find the things that really fit into their world. And that's what I really mean by practical. Things, especially tools, that really fit into their world.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, especially you want to it almost be on demand in the way that they like to learn. It's going to have the most impact on them. So taking all those things into consideration is huge, I think, especially if you want your business to grow and perform better. You know, why force them into a scenario or situation that they're uncomfortable, they've not got the energy to do? It feels like a chore. If it's how they want to learn and it's already available in a format that they like to learn, that's going to have a huge impact on your business performance. So if I was listening to this and wanted to know more about what you do, or I think that you would be able to help my business, where could I find out more about yourself?
LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So just look for Jamie Dixon on LinkedIn. You can also check out my website, shapingpaths.com, Shaping Paths, all one word. Or you can reach out to me on WeChat, Jamie Dixon, capital J, capital D, all one word, if you are on WeChat.
So that was Jamie sharing his 3 top tips when it comes to implementing a practical learning and development strategy for performance.